Change this thing up until last night. There's something new happening every day. In fact, we just learned this morning that KFC is doing virtual reality training now for how to fry chicken. UPS is doing it to help with their drivers. So those are just a few examples of where the technology is already being introduced. What else could it do? So we talked about the social skills element. There was a study done at Stanford about 6 years ago, and I know that's a little old, but it's just my favorite one to talk about. They've done several since then, but this one's, to me, the most interesting. They brought in about 50 people, and they told all of the people in the study about the impacts of using of non-recycled paper and how that leads to deforestation and the environmental impacts of not recycling. They then split that group in half. Half of them read this really vivid description of what it was like to saw down a tree. And it was very, again, very vivid. It talked about the buzzing and the wood flying and tried to kind of create as real a depiction of that as possible. The other group didn't read that story. They did it. They put on a headset. They grabbed paddles, like we'll show you here in a second. The haptic feedback on the paddles gave them the vibration and the physical sensation of what that act was like. And they virtually sawed down that tree. Then when the study was over, the participant would be sitting at a table, filling out some forms. The scientist had put a cup of water on the table and a stack of napkins, and accidentally spilled the water. The people that had virtually sawed down that tree used 20% fewer napkins than the people that just read about the experience. So they were able to demonstrate how immersing yourself in that environment could create that emotional connection and empathy that would actually change your behavior. And they've done several studies since then that have demonstrated similar things. They made you look like they projected you out to what your 65-year-old self would look like and see if that led you to save more for retirement. It did. They made you colorblind and see if that would make you more likely to help somebody else who was colorblind. It did. So we're starting to see the power of what this technology can do. And while Chris is going to give you just a really quick demonstration of what that looks like, and we'll be here after this session if anybody wants to put on the HTC Vive and give it a try and see what it's like. There we go. So while they're doing that, just a few other statistics that we have found from other studies. Public speaking. Fear of public speaking reduced by 25% after 4 weeks of VR sessions. Fear of heights. 87.5% of participants improved their fear or reduced their fear of heights after going through VR training. Some of this freaks me out, honestly. Lazy eye. 50% more effective than traditional eye patch treatment by putting you in a virtual environment and helping rewire the brain. And I think really fascinating and interesting for us as a society, opioids. So there was a study done with burn victims and their pain tolerance when they were having their wounds redressed. A patient who put on a headset and viewed a snowscape, snowman, lots of whites and blues, that had the same effect at managing their pain than opioids and the actual painkiller. And that's not self-reported. They did brain scans of the patients going through that and saw the areas of the brain and the pain receptors activated in both cases. So think about the implications of that. And you can look at, there's an article on that. It'll pop up real quick. Can virtual reality stem our opioid crisis. So some really interesting stuff there. Now, the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. If VR can do all of this, we have a responsibility as a group to make sure we know what we're doing to people. And there's an ethical dilemma here that kind of presents itself that may not find itself into the other type of work that we do. So as we enter into this world that's going to require new skills, new knowledge, and new sensitivities to what we're going to do to people. The other question I think that comes from this is what you can see Christian doing there. There are a lot of programs that have been created in VR that are really cool. Doesn't mean they're better. Okay? So I can pick up these bones and put them on the skeleton. That's really neat. It doesn't necessarily mean it's more effective than some other mode of training. There are cases where that is the case. So we have to be even more diligent in our assessments and identifying what is the learning that we're trying to get across and what is the best method to do that. VR may not be the best method for that, depending on what you're talking about. Okay, so there's VR, and we mentioned there's augmented reality. And the best way that, sorry, I forgot that great quote. Who here does diversity and inclusion training? A little bit? So again, Stanford's done a ton of work on this. And they've concluded that there's no better way to affect people's behaviors, particularly around discrimination, than actually putting them in another person's shoes and letting them experience that. There's an article recently in the Harvard Business Review that, again, may scare some of you, but I'm just quoting the article, that D&I training is an $8 billion industry that has basically nothing to show for itself. We feel like we have to do it. We do have to do it. But the results are very, very difficult to come by and to actually change people's behaviors. Potentially, this is a way that we can help that. Okay, so now we talk about AR. I think the definitions of these things are evolving rapidly, but I think the best way to describe AR is if virtual reality can put you anywhere, it can take you to another world, augmented reality can bring anything to you. Okay, so it brings things that are not there, like Pokemon, into your real life. Who has Pokemon on their phone right now? Okay. All right. When it launched last year, it was the fastest ever app to get to 10 million downloads. It ultimately got up to, let me check my numbers, 45 million daily users and generated $470 million in revenue in its first 80 days. It was kind of a big deal. But the more important thing is it was our first real introduction from most of us to the concept of augmented reality. AR had been around, but in these smaller pockets and different uses, this kind of brought it into our collective consciousness, right? I'm seeing this thing in the real space that I'm in by looking at it on my phone. So that's really kind of what kick-started AR. But same with VR. AR, like I said, has been around and it is already being used in learning organizations today. This is Caterpillar. Now, one form of AR that you just saw is on your phone, using your camera, right? Another form is actually using lenses. So if you remember Google Glass, I mean, that was really the first attempt at AR with glasses. It's coming back, right? They're trying to refine the model and refine the technology so that it doesn't look so weird and it's not so uncomfortable. But Caterpillar's already doing it. So they've got their repair people with technicians that allow them to have these digital overlays of the equipment that they're working on, whether that's measurements or instructions, basically anything that they want to do from a real-time performance support perspective using augmented reality. They just started that earlier this year, I think. By the end of this year, we're going to have Apple, Facebook, and Google all introducing some form of AR to the consumer, which means that you, on your phone, will be able to create your own augmented reality experiences. So that is happening. That's happening really, really fast. And in some ways, we're going to see the impact of AR faster than we are see the impact of VR. We're going to show one more example of a little bit of AR and VR, another business that's using it.
We all know the feeling of walking up and down aisles trying to find that one last thing on our list. So Lowe's is rolling out 2 new tech experiences to help make shopping and home improvements a little bit easier. The first is an app to navigate and find items in the store with computer vision.
Using digital maps of each store, the app actually works out the quickest way to get to the items on your list and then the fastest way to check out.
It's powered by Google's Tango technology, where special cameras sense depth in 3D. This means Tango can measure objects, map a room, and see virtual things in the real world. It's already being used in museums for augmented reality tours. In store, a yellow overlay shows the path to the next item on your list. It's straightforward, and the cameras didn't get confused when I quickly turned around or put the phone down to grab an item. The only issue is that there's just one Tango phone right now, the Lenovo Fab 2 Pro. More devices are coming later this year, but in the meantime you can borrow a phone in store to try it out. It's launching in April at 2 US stores in Sunnyvale, California and Linwood, Washington. If real-world shopping isn't enough, try home improvements in the virtual world. This VR experience on the HTC Vive walks you step-by-step through projects like retiling a bathroom.
Who would have thought that home DIY and tiling would be a relaxing process?
Haptic feedback from controllers and visual indicators tell you where you're going right or wrong before you DIY for real.
Oh, well, I spilled a little bit.
Lowe's is trialling it in a few stores to start with, but eventually the VR app will be available to download so you can practice skills at home.
This is what happens when you're looking at your phone screen and not where you're going.
You want to talk a little bit about Z-Space?
Yeah. So just real quick, what Z-Space is. Am I on? There we go.
There you go.
It's able to bring a screen to schools. So VR is a very isolated experience. But if you're able to have a social aspect where someone else can interact with you and enjoy that with you, it's a lot better. So they're stepping it up a little bit. And so there's already a screen by Z-Space, and they're trying it out. You can control and everything. So it's like Jeremy said, it's happening now. So.
And that, some of you may have heard the term mixed reality, right? That's just kind of the bucket when we don't know what else to say. But that probably approaches more of a mixed reality. You know, it is digital artifacts in your space, but you're also able to interact with them. And there's a lot of things happening there. Before we kind of transition to the home stretch here, the Lowe's thing you just saw. When they did a trial run of tiling the bathroom using VR, they found that there was a 36% better recall for the people that went through that experience than people that just watched a YouTube video. That's great. My question is, how many times in your life are you going to retile a bathroom? So if we go back to the beginning, when Jeremy was talking about knowledge acquisition versus knowledge retention, which category does that fall in for you? Now maybe everybody has a different answer to that based on how handy they are or how many times they expect themselves to move. But just because, I guess my point is, just because you can go through a VR experience and have better recall doesn't necessarily mean that that's the better way to go. Because for me, I probably am only going to do it once. That'd be really cool, but I'm much more likely to go acquire that knowledge on YouTube than to try to send myself through an experience where I can retain it. So again, those are the types of questions that I think we'll start to want to ask ourselves more as we approach identifying the best learning solution for any given issue and any given learner with the technology that's available. Okay, our last thing, as we kind of wrap this up, is we looked very specifically at video on demand and we looked at VR. But if you watch marketing, that's where you can also start to see where the next big trend's coming from and start to think about how that might impact you. So these are some of the trends that the marketing industry is expecting to be really big in 2018. Live streaming. Video streaming was 75% of all internet traffic in 2017. 75%. Viewers watch live streams 3 times longer than pre-recorded video. Now we hope that's true.
Which, by the way, we are live streaming right now. And so, say hello. You can also find this presentation. It'll be posted on our Facebook page at Infinitude if you want to go ahead and take a look at it later and acquire some knowledge.
Mobile video. Ad spend on mobile is going to grow 49% in 2018. For the first time ever, there will actually be a decline of video consumption on desktops and laptops. It's not that we're watching less video, it's just that we're watching more video on our phones. And so are our learners. Artificial intelligence, we could do another 2-hour session on that, right? But that's coming, and that's coming fast. Explainer videos are expected to be bigger in marketing. If there's a video on your web page, it's 4 times more likely that I'm going to watch that video than I'm going to read the text that describes what your company does. Chatbots. It's expected that 85% of customer support interactions will be with a chatbot by 2020. We are kicking off a project this week with a client where they will have the ability to text a keyword to a chatbot and get the performance support pushed back to them for whatever category of content that they were looking for, right? So instead of having to go onto the LMS and search for it or kind of find a different way, I just text ordering. And I'll get a job aid or a video pushed back to me that will help me with that. And then geofencing. This one is going to speak for itself. I don't know how many of you have seen this.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
So that's happening. So imagine that translated into our world. All right, we talked about I can go online and I can search for the content that I want. I can just ask for the content that I want. But what if my phone knows who I am, what I do, where I am, and what I'm likely to be doing at that moment, and just gives me what I need? The technology is here. So if you were in the session earlier this morning with Jamie from Deloitte, one of the things that he said was, learning and development departments are going to become more about enabling learning than developing content. And so as we kind of think about takeaways here, I think this very much complements what he was saying in terms of identifying these vehicles to get learning to where the learners want it and need it and where they're used to seeing it. It probably means you're going to need to get to know your IT guys. And that may be a daunting prospect to some of you. But you're going to need their help when you start to implement this. We said the money is in gaming and entertainment, and it is, right? When VR developers were asked what it is that they're working on, 78% said, I'm working on games and entertainment. But look at number 2. And yeah, that's a big gap, all right? 27% to 78 is a big gap. But the second most worked on industry from a VR and AR perspective is training and education. So it's coming. Branded experiences are kind of more of those marketing type experiences. If you go to like a store or a trade show, sometimes they'll have little booths set up for VR that'll kind of put you in a product experience. It's more of a marketing thing. And then finally, we do say beware the hype curve, right? Because there is such a thing as a hype curve. And this is the one that Gartner just put out last month. We do see a massive uptake when a new technology is implemented by early adopters, people that just are really into that type of thing. We very often see that fall off into what they call the trough of disillusionment. And sometimes it never gets out of there, okay? So we do have to be somewhat cautious, right? Not everything we see or hear buzz about is actually going to become a thing. But if you'll notice, the Gartner study shows that VR is emerging from the trough of disillusionment and starting up the slope of enlightenment. Now they have AR still in the trough. But I think we've seen enough examples today of how that's being used, plus with Apple, Facebook, and Google all betting billions of dollars on it, it's very unlikely to stay in that trough of disillusionment for very long. So who learned one thing that they didn't know? Okay. All right, good. And I didn't even look in there once. So it's because I told myself. So we wanted to kind of end early. We didn't end as early as we wanted to. Not so much for Q&A, but just general discussion, because we're not the experts on this. We just did a lot of research.
Yep.
This stuff's changing all the time. And then obviously if anybody wants to stay and play, we have that option too.
Yeah, I'm going to be here on the VR section, so if you want to come and check it out, if you've never tried it on, it's quite an experience. Also, like I mentioned, we have our live session on Facebook, so check it out, and it's probably going to be posted out there afterwards. We have a booth, and if you want to come check it out, we have a few folks from Infinitude also in the back. If you want to catch one of them, they also have some knowledge. If you have any questions, want to chat about it. We have a car, so come check it out and jump in it. Now, it's got a name. The car is the Big Ideas in a Small Car. All right, so if you have a big idea, come share it with us. And we have a YouTube show that you might be featured in it. So think about an idea, come see us, and come talk to Jeff, our host.
Also, I think before we run into Q&A, just a quick reminder, if you've been to the other sessions, you probably remember, there's a paper in the middle of your table with a website for you to go do a survey for this session. If you can go ahead and do that now. And then, so, questions?
Thank you.
And I need those things that I borrow from friends. So check it out, but just leave it there.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have a teenage boy, and he can apparently drive fast cars and build buildings and do all these things because he learned at video games.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any research that says that that's true, that he might be a better driver because he plays Grand Theft Auto?
There is. Now it's growing research. And again, it gets down to very isolated skills that you have to be able to kind of pin it down to. But anything, we often think that VR is good for things that are otherwise dangerous, right? So if you have an opportunity to practice something that where you could kill yourself or someone else in a safe environment, that's a good thing. Yeah. But I mean, there's so much research, and it's just coming out every day. So I can't cite anything specifically related to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's out there. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I'm terrible about that. She said, her son likes to drive really fast on video games. Does that actually help him, drive a car? Or that's paraphrasing. Be a better driver. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. NFL quarterbacks are using it to learn how to read defenses and make faster decisions on the field.
Also, if you remember, Jeremy, Pizza Domino's put out a game that it was just to make pizzas, and it was scored. So I think they reached out to the highest scores from the game, and I think brought them in, and turns out they were pretty good at making pizzas, from this game.
So they used it as a recruiting tool,
yeah,
and cut down their training time because they walked in the door already knowing the process. It's pretty clever.
Yeah. Cool. All right. If anyone wants to jump, we got a question over there. So the question was, virtual reality and AR, can't be the best thing to do in all types of training. So you want some examples of where it would be a good idea? Yeah? Well, I think, like we mentioned, if you have a dangerous situation that you don't want to put your employees through that, they can practice in a safe environment without, exploding the meter or something, Also, if you have, we heard Kentucky Fried Chicken was trying that out. One of the reasons they were saying is because they wanted to cut down on the product that they use every time somebody is training, and they just have to throw that away. So I think the logistics of setting up something like this could probably outweigh some of those things that they have to deal with.
We talked about empathy. Anytime empathy is an important part of what you're doing. We've also seen demonstrations where the social element, right? So if there's a massive geographical distance between learner and teacher, they can both enter that virtual world together from, thousands of miles away and get that same presence that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. But I think we are in this massive period of discovery.
All right, if you want to discover what it feels like to feel VR, come check it out. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.